the aircraft that vanished, but never truly disappeared. On March 8, 2014, a commercial aircraft operated by Malaysia Airlines departed from Kuala Lumpur, heading toward Beijing. It never arrived. The aircraft carried 239 passengers and crew. It vanished from radar less than an hour after takeoff. No distress call, no confirmed crash site, no final message. And yet, evidence suggests the aircraft may not simply have disappeared. It may have traveled somewhere that should not exist. The first suspected location. The Phantom Corridor military radar later revealed that the aircraft made a sudden and deliberate turn westward. It crossed the Malaysian peninsula and flew into a remote region of the sky known informally among pilots as the Phantom Corridor. This region has long been associated with unstable magnetic fields, sudden navigation failure, unexplained atmospheric disturbances, aircraft reporting temporary system loss. Official aviation authorities do not recognize the term, but pilots speak of it quietly. Some describe seeing lights moving against the wind. Others report instruments freezing for seconds. Flight MH370 entered this corridor, and after that moment, nothing behaved normally. The sky that bends satellite analysis suggested the aircraft climbed to an unusual altitude, then descended rapidly, then climbed again, a pattern inconsistent with controlled flight. Atmospheric researchers later noted strange ionospheric disturbances in the region that night. Localized, unexplained, almost like a distortion in the structure of the sky itself. Some investigators privately described it as a temporary rupture. No official confirmation exists. The second suspected location, the southern route. After disappearing from radar, satellite data suggested the aircraft traveled south toward the vast emptiness of the Indian Ocean. This area is one of the most isolated places on Earth. Thousands of kilometers from land, extreme ocean depths, violent storms, unstable seafloor formations. But the region also carries a darker reputation. For centuries, sailors have reported strange occurrences in these waters. Ships losing direction without cause, compasses spinning uncontrollably, voices heard over empty radio channels, lights beneath the ocean surface. Most reports were dismissed as myth, until MH370 entered the same region. The zone of silence. Oceanographic maps identify certain sectors of the southern Indian Ocean where sound behaves unpredictably. Acoustic waves bend, signals vanish, echoes distort. Submarine operators sometimes refer to these areas as zones of silence. In these zones, communication becomes unreliable, sonar returns false readings, objects become difficult to track. If an aircraft crashed here, it might never be found. Or perhaps something within the zone prevents discovery. And the third suspected location, the deep ocean trench. Search teams later identified a massive underwater trench within the suspected crash area, a chasm descending thousands of meters. Its depth exceeds the height of Mount Everest. Little is known about its environment. Extreme pressure crushes most equipment. Magnetic conditions fluctuate. Geological activity is constant. If the aircraft entered this trench, recovery would be nearly impossible. But sonar scans suggested something unusual within the depths. A large metallic mass, stationary, perfectly intact. The signal vanished before verification. The island where debris appeared. Months later, aircraft fragments washed ashore on the remote island of Réunion. The discovery confirmed the aircraft had reached the ocean, but the debris showed strange characteristics. The damage patterns did not fully match a high-speed crash. Some surfaces showed unusual heat exposure. Others appeared untouched. Investigators could not explain the combination. The spiritual interpretation. In several cultures, the ocean is not merely water. It is a boundary, a passage between worlds, a place where the living and the unknown intersect. Some spiritual interpreters suggested MH370 did not simply crash. It crossed a threshold, a transition from one state of existence to another. Such interpretations remain outside scientific investigation, but they continue to circulate. The fishermen's accounts. Years after the disappearance, fishermen operating near restricted waters described strange experiences. They reported sudden drops in temperature, electrical failure on boats, unusual glowing shapes beneath the surface. A persistent feeling of being observed. One fisherman described seeing a large shadow moving beneath his vessel. Not a whale, not a submarine. Something silent, something enormous. The lights above the ocean. Multiple satellite observations recorded brief flashes of light in remote areas of the Southern Ocean. These flashes did not resemble lightning. They originated from a single point, expanded rapidly, then vanished. No natural explanation was confirmed. Some researchers suggested energy release events. Others described them as unknown atmospheric phenomena. The voices in the static radio operators monitoring emergency frequencies occasionally reported hearing faint transmissions linked to the aircraft's identification code. The recordings were heavily distorted. Fragments of speech, indistinguishable words, breathing, then silence. No source location could be identified. The fourth suspected location. The restricted zone. Years after the disappearance, a region of the ocean was quietly designated as restricted by multiple governments. Satellite monitoring increased. Naval patrols enforced exclusion zones. The official explanation cited safety concerns, but the exact reason remains undisclosed. Some believe investigators discovered something there, something not meant for public knowledge. The dream phenomenon. A disturbing pattern emerged among some families of passengers. Several reported recurring dreams involving the aircraft. The dreams shared identical elements. A vast, dark ocean, a circular structure beneath the water, a bright interior chamber, a feeling that the passengers were still alive. Psychologists attribute this to trauma. Yet the similarities between reports remain unusual. The cabin that never emptied. One controversial theory suggests the aircraft never fully crashed. Instead, it entered a stable state, suspended somewhere between destruction and preservation. A sealed environment, a preserved interior, passengers frozen in time. This theory has no scientific support, yet it continues to fascinate researchers. The ocean floor formation. Deep sea mapping later identified a circular formation on the seabed. Its geometry appeared unnatural, its dimensions enormous. At its center lay an unidentified object. Search operations were discontinued before confirmation. No explanation was given. On the spiritual hypothesis. Some interpret the event through a spiritual lens. They suggest certain locations on Earth act as gateways, points where physical reality becomes unstable, where time and space behave differently. If MH370 encountered such a location, its disappearance might not be physical. It might be dimensional. Again, no scientific evidence supports this, but the theory persists. The unfinished discovery. Despite massive international search operations, the final resting place of MH370 remains unknown. The aircraft is both lost and present, gone, yet still detected. Destroyed, yet possibly intact. Silent, yet transmitting. The mystery exists in a state of uncertainty, a discovery that never completes itself. Closing narration. The disappearance of MH370 is not merely an aviation incident. It is a story of locations that resist explanation, a sky that behaves strangely, an ocean that hides its secrets, signals that continue without source. Perhaps the aircraft was lost. Perhaps it was taken. Or perhaps it entered a place where human understanding cannot follow. Until the truth is revealed, MH370 remains both found and unfound. The coordinates of silence. The coordinates appeared without warning. At 0241 UTC, nearly 6 months after flight MH370 vanished, an independent satellite monitoring station in Eastern Europe detected a strange signal. It was weak, fragmented, and distorted, but unmistakably structured. It wasn't a distress call, it wasn't noise, it was a pattern. A sequence of numbers repeated every 11 minutes. 69275 degrees, 104.82 degree E. A location. A place in the Indian Ocean where nothing significant was supposed to exist. No islands, no shipping routes, no recorded wreckage, just open water. Yet something there was transmitting. The Phantom Zone. When analysts plotted the coordinates, they discovered something deeply disturbing. The location sat within a region sailors had quietly feared for decades, an area unofficially called the Phantom Zone. Ships had reported navigation failures, sudden compass rotations, radar shadows with no visible objects, unexplained electrical blackouts, voices on radio channels that should have been silent. Official records dismissed these as equipment malfunctions, but fishermen in nearby waters told a different story. They spoke of a silent fog rising from the sea at night, lights beneath the surface moving against ocean currents, a humming vibration felt through the hull of boats, shadows in the water too large to identify, and always overwhelming fear. The first expedition. A classified expedition was launched, not publicly announced, not reported in media. A deep-sea survey vessel equipped with autonomous drones entered the coordinates under strict radio silence. Within hours, the anomalies began. Unexplained phenomena recorded. Sonar showed massive geometric shapes below the seabed. Water temperature fluctuated rapidly. Magnetic fields spiked violently. Communication delays stretched beyond physics predictions. Crew reported intense headaches and anxiety. Then came the footage. The object beneath. At 3,700 meters below the surface, one drone captured something impossible, a structure, smooth, symmetrical, not natural, not wreckage, not geological. It resembled a circular formation partially buried beneath ocean sediment, nearly 1 kilometer wide. The material reflected almost no light. Nearby debris floated as if gravity itself behaved differently and scattered around the structure, fragments resembling aircraft components. But none matched MH370's known design. The voice transmission. At Oro 3:14 local time, the expedition recorded an audio signal. The recording remains classified, but leaked transcripts describe a whispering voice, male, weak, repeating one phrase, "We are still flying." The voice then distorted into a deep harmonic frequency that forced operators to shut down the system. Several crew members later reported recurring nightmares of endless clouds and empty passengers. 2 resigned within weeks. 1 disappeared. The returning signal. Months later, something even stranger occurred. Satellite systems monitoring the region began receiving aircraft identification pings. The code belonged to MH370, but the signal behaved impossibly. Appearing for seconds, jumping between locations instantly, emitting from multiple altitudes simultaneously, violating known physics of radar reflection. It was as if the aircraft existed in several places at once, or in none. Witnesses on the island's remote island communities near the southern Indian Ocean reported sightings, not crashes, not debris, but a plane, flying silently, no engine noise, no navigation lights, sometimes frozen motionless in the sky. Witness descriptions were consistent. The aircraft appeared undamaged. Windows were completely dark. The shape seemed slightly distorted. It vanished instantly without acceleration. One fisherman claimed he saw figures standing motionless inside the cabin, watching the ocean, watching him. The black box that should not exist. 2 years after the disappearance, a deep-sea recovery mission reportedly located a signal resembling a black box beacon. But the signal contained impossible data: continuous engine operation, stable cabin pressure, passenger movement readings, flight altitude fluctuations. The data indicated the aircraft was still operational, still flying. Yet no physical aircraft was ever recovered. When investigators attempted to retrieve the device, the signal stopped permanently. The object was never found again. Psychological effects. Personnel involved in the investigation began reporting disturbing symptoms: shared dreams of endless flight, hearing radio static in silence, seeing aircraft shadows overhead, sudden fear of open skies, repeated visions of passengers with empty eyes. A classified psychological report concluded, Exposure to the anomaly produces persistent perception disturbances. Some researchers believed the phenomenon wasn't mechanical, it was interactive. It responded. The time distortion theory. A controversial theory emerged. MH370 did not crash. It did not explode. It crossed something, a boundary, a region where time behaves differently. Supporters of this theory pointed to radar disappearance without debris, satellite handshake irregularities, continued electronic signatures, witness sightings, years apart, impossible black box data. According to the hypothesis, the aircraft entered a temporal loop, a space where flight never ends, passengers trapped between moments, alive but unreachable. The final recording, one last transmission, surfaced anonymously online, a cockpit recording, authenticity unconfirmed. The audio contains heavy breathing, unidentified alarm tones, electrical interference, a calm voice speaking, the final words, "We are not alone in this sky," then silence. The first encounter. It began with a boat. 3 years after flight MH370 vanished, a small Indonesian fishing vessel reported rescuing a man drifting alone in the Indian Ocean. He had no identification, no visible injuries, no memory of how he arrived. But he kept repeating a single phrase. The flight never ended. Passenger 47 authorities later matched his identity to the MH370 passenger manifest. Seat 47A. Official records listed him as deceased. Yet he was alive. What made him disturbing medical examinations revealed abnormalities. Body temperature slightly below normal human range. No detectable jet lag despite years missing. Unusual neural activity patterns. Extreme sensitivity to sunlight. Refusal to sleep in darkness. But the most disturbing detail: his biological age had not changed. It was as if time had never passed. The man who did not blink, doctors observing him noticed something unnatural. He rarely blinked, sometimes not for minutes. When questioned about the flight, he described impossible experiences. Endless clouds without horizon. Passengers sitting motionless for years. Crew members walking but leaving no sound. Windows showing only darkness outside. Time repeating in cycles. He insisted the plane never landed. It simply continued. The drawings. During psychological evaluation, he began drawing hundreds of sketches. Each image depicted a massive circular object in the sky, a plane suspended above an endless ocean, human figures standing motionless in aisles, a dark shape surrounding the aircraft. One drawing showed something inside the cabin, something watching the passengers. More appearances. Within 2 years, 5 additional individuals were reported across remote coastal regions: Madagascar, Western Australia, Sri Lanka, Southern Africa, remote Pacific Islands. Each matched missing MH370 passengers. Each shared the same characteristics: memory gaps, unusual physiological readings, extreme fear of open sky, identical descriptions of endless flight. None could explain how they returned. The shared memory. Under hypnosis, the recovered individuals described the same experience, a moment during the flight when everything changed. Their description: the sky outside turned completely black. Navigation instruments froze. A deep vibration filled the cabin. Passengers experienced intense pressure. Time seemed to slow. Then came silence. Not normal silence. A silence so complete it erased sound itself. After that moment, reality behaved differently. The entity in the cabin. Several survivors independently described a presence, not visible, but sensed. A consciousness moving through the aircraft. They described a feeling of being observed constantly, whispers without language, passengers becoming emotionless, crew losing sense of identity. One survivor stated, "It learned from us." The aging paradox medical research revealed an impossible phenomenon. Recovered passengers showed cellular structures without normal aging damage, Stable biological markers, no evidence of long-term dehydration or starvation, yet they had been missing for years. The official report described them as biologically displaced. The disappearance of the survivors. Then something even more disturbing happened. Several recovered passengers vanished again. Surveillance footage showed strange patterns. Electrical interference before disappearance. Distorted shadows. Sudden loss of camera signal. No physical exit recorded. It was as if they were retrieved. The recurring dream. Investigators studying the survivors documented a shared nightmare. Every subject described the same dream. Sitting inside the aircraft. Endless turbulence. Dark ocean below. A voice announcing arrival. But the plane never landed. They woke moments before the announcement ended. The sky fear phenomenon. Psychologists discovered all survivors developed severe reactions to open sky. Symptoms included panic attacks outdoors, fear of clouds, distress at aircraft sounds, hallucinations of engines overhead. One survivor screamed during a clear day, "It's looking for us." No aircraft was present. The message hidden in data. Data recovered from survivor interviews revealed a disturbing pattern. When their statements were analyzed linguistically, repeating structures appeared. Hidden within their speech was a recurring sequence, a mathematical pattern, a signal. Some researchers believe the survivors were unknowingly transmitting information, or being used to do so. The last survivor. The final recovered passenger remained in isolation. He refused to speak. But before communication ended, he wrote one sentence: "We were never meant to return." Shortly afterward, all monitoring devices in his room failed simultaneously. When power returned, he was gone. The unanswered question. Authorities officially denied all reports of surviving passengers. Records were sealed, witnesses dismissed, evidence classified. But leaked documents suggest a disturbing conclusion. MH370 may not be lost, it may be somewhere else, still flying, still carrying passengers, still watching. The silence protocol. Months after the first reported survivor appeared, something unusual began happening across multiple intelligence agencies. Internal communications referencing the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 were quietly reclassified. Documents vanished from databases. Witness statements were sealed. Research programs were suddenly terminated. The operation had an internal name: the Silence Protocol. Its objective was simple: control the narrative, limit the information, prevent public awareness. But why? The classified meeting. A leaked report described a closed international meeting held in 2015. Representatives from multiple governments attended: military officials, satellite specialists, aerospace engineers. The meeting lasted 9 hours. No official transcript exists, but a summary later surfaced anonymously. It described 3 conclusions. The aircraft had not been destroyed in a conventional crash. The phenomenon involved unknown technology. Public disclosure would cause global panic. The document ended with a single instruction: contain all evidence. The missing data investigators later discovered large sections of radar and satellite data had been permanently removed. Entire time segments were missing. Search records contained unexplained gaps. Even raw telemetry files showed signs of alteration. Digital forensics revealed something disturbing. The data had not been deleted. It had been overwritten with fabricated information. Someone had rewritten history. The military tracking event, one former defense contractor claimed military radar had followed MH370 long after its official disappearance. According to his testimony, the aircraft maintained steady altitude. It traveled beyond expected fuel limits. It entered restricted airspace without interception. It vanished only after encountering an unidentified object. His statement was dismissed publicly. Privately, he disappeared months later. The satellite anomaly. Satellite operators monitoring the southern Indian Ocean reported repeated signal distortions. These distortions appeared whenever imaging systems focused on specific ocean regions. The interference showed structured patterns, not random noise, intentional obstruction, as if something prevented observation from above. The restricted ocean zone. A vast region of ocean was gradually declared restricted territory. Official reasons included environmental protection, hazardous conditions, navigation safety, but satellite tracking revealed continuous military patrols in the area. Unidentified vessels monitored all traffic. Unauthorized ships reported warning transmissions. Some described hearing a message repeating endlessly, "Leave this region immediately." No transmitting source was ever identified. The scientists' warning. A senior oceanographic researcher publicly announced he had located an artificial structure beneath the seabed. Hours later, his statement was retracted. His research funding was revoked. His laboratory closed. Before disappearing from public life, he posted a single message online. "It is not a wreckage site. It is a containment site." The technology gap engineers analyzing recovered debris reported properties unknown to modern material science. The fragments showed extreme heat resistance, unidentified molecular composition, self-stabilizing structural patterns, residual electromagnetic activity. Some researchers suggested the material had been altered, not destroyed, modified. The official report excluded these findings. The Psychological Containment Program leaked documents described a classified program studying individuals exposed to MH370-related events. Subjects reported recurring visions of aircraft interiors, hearing engine noise in silence, sensations of movement while stationary, shared dreams of endless flight. Researchers concluded exposure to the phenomenon produced lasting cognitive effects. The program was terminated without explanation. The aviation industry response. Several aviation manufacturers quietly upgraded aircraft communication systems following the incident. The changes included continuous satellite tracking, automatic distress transmission, independent power sources for tracking devices. Publicly, these were described as safety improvements. Privately, engineers acknowledged another reason: prevent another disappearance under similar conditions. The hidden pattern. Independent analysts studying global aviation data discovered a disturbing trend. In the decade before MH370, multiple aircraft had reported brief but similar anomalies: sudden instrument failure, unknown radar contacts, temporary loss of time perception, unexplained navigation changes. All incidents occurred near the same oceanic region. MH370 was simply the first that never returned. The surveillance expansion. Following the disappearance, global monitoring systems expanded significantly. New satellite networks were deployed, deep-sea listening stations installed, high-altitude observation platforms activated. The scale suggested preparation for recurrence. The official explanation authorities eventually provided a final statement. They concluded MH370 most likely crashed due to fuel exhaustion. No further investigation was required. The case was considered closed, yet search operations quietly continued. The whistleblower transmission. Years later, an anonymous data package appeared online. It contained sonar images of a massive circular structure, audio recordings of unidentified signals, satellite logs showing persistent anomalies, a final written message. The message read, "The aircraft was never lost, it was taken." The files were removed within hours. The unresolved reality. Despite official closure, the mystery remains active. Signals continue to appear. Witnesses continue reporting sightings. Data continues disappearing. The event remains unfinished. A disappearance without conclusion. A discovery without confirmation. The story of MH370 is no longer just about a missing aircraft. It is a story about controlled information, hidden discoveries, and a truth carefully concealed. The plane vanished, but the investigation never ended, and perhaps it was never meant to. The discovery. No one was meant to see. Years after the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370, deep-sea mapping technology revealed something disturbing beneath the southern Indian Ocean. It was not debris. It was not wreckage. It was not natural. It was a structure, perfectly circular, symmetrical, massive, nearly 2 kilometers in diameter, and at its center, an empty cavity large enough to contain a commercial aircraft. The geometry of the seabed ocean floors are chaotic. They form through violent geological processes. Nothing about them is perfectly shaped, yet this structure showed precise geometry, smooth curved boundaries, identical radial patterns, symmetrical depressions, artificial angles. Geologists reviewing the data agreed on one thing: nature does not create structures like this. The energy emission. When underwater probes approached the formation, sensors detected a powerful energy field. The readings showed electromagnetic radiation, localized gravitational distortion, heat signatures inconsistent with ocean temperatures, unknown wave frequencies. The energy appeared stable, constant, active. Something below the seabed was operating. The drone that entered, an autonomous drone, was deployed to explore the central cavity. Its descent was recorded in real time. At first, the images showed only darkness. Then the camera captured something unexpected: a metallic surface, curved, reflective, smooth. It resembled the exterior of an aircraft fuselage. Before confirmation could be made, the video feed distorted violently. The drone transmitted one final frame, a massive shadow moving across the structure, then signal loss. The drone was never recovered. The sound from the gate. Acoustic monitoring equipment recorded continuous sound emissions from the site. The recordings contained deep harmonic vibrations, rhythmic pulses, repeating tonal sequences, frequencies similar to aircraft engines. But the sounds did not behave mechanically. They resembled breathing, slow, measured, alive. The water that moved differently. Oceanographers studying the region discovered unusual water behavior. Currents flowed in circular patterns. Pressure levels fluctuated unpredictably. Light penetrated the water in abnormal ways. Objects dropped into the area descended slowly, as if resistance increased. Some researchers described the environment as a distortion of physical space. The fishermen who heard the call. Local fishermen working near the restricted zone reported hearing low-frequency sounds through their boats. They described a distant humming, vibrations through metal hulls, a sensation of pressure inside the chest, sudden overwhelming fear. Several claimed the sound resembled a human voice calling from deep underwater. Authorities dismissed the reports, but they continued. The biological absence, marine life avoided the region completely. Surveys found no fish populations, no large predators, no migrating species, no biological activity, an area of total ecological silence, as if the ocean itself refused to enter. The time delay phenomenon. Signals transmitted into the structure returned with abnormal delays. Milliseconds became seconds, seconds became minutes. Time itself appeared to behave differently within the zone. This discovery led to a controversial hypothesis. The gateway theory. Some researchers proposed the structure was not a crash site. It was an opening, a gateway, a region where physical reality weakened, a boundary between environments. If MH370 entered this region, it may not have been destroyed. It may have crossed into another state of existence. The mathematical signal. Months later, satellite receivers detected a transmission originating from the site. The signal contained repeating mathematical sequences, prime numbers, geometric ratios, navigation data. Embedded within the sequence was a code used in aircraft communication systems. The signal appeared to identify itself. The human response personnel assigned to monitor the signal began reporting psychological effects. Hearing voices in silence, feeling watched while alone, recurring dreams of aircraft interiors, a sense of being called toward the ocean. Several requested immediate reassignment. One refused to leave the monitoring station, claiming, "It wants us to understand." The disappearance of the research vessel. A research ship studying the structure later vanished without distress signal. Satellite tracking showed the vessel approaching the coordinates. Then its signal stopped instantly. No debris was ever found. No emergency call transmitted. The crew was never recovered. The government response. Following the incident, international authorities permanently sealed the region. Navigation warnings were issued, military patrols increased, satellite observation intensified. The official explanation cited hazardous ocean conditions. The real reason was never disclosed. The unfinished question. If the structure exists, if the aircraft remains intact, if the signals continue, then the disappearance of MH370 was not an ending. It was a transition, a movement from one reality into another. Beneath the Indian Ocean lies a formation no one can fully explain. A structure that emits energy, a signal that continues transmitting, a gateway that may still be open, and somewhere beyond that boundary, the aircraft may still exist.